right, hello and welcome back to the second installment of Searching for and Maintaining Peace by Father Jacques Philippe. I hope that your small groups have been going well. We've been enjoying this book. This is not the first time I've read it. It's not the first time Father's read this book, but I'm getting a lot out of it. And I think the reread, especially with this focus here at St. Charles this year of peace and be still and just this reclaiming of Sunday, there's just so much richness from Father Jacques Philippe within these chapters that I think it's hitting on all fronts because of our formation nights and just all the different things. And so today we're going to be going through chapters 4 through 7 in part 1, which kind of rounds out that part 1, and then we'll be getting into part 2. And if you look at chapter 4, peace is often at stake in the struggle. And I think chapter 3 kind of led us to this, but then this idea, like, what's at stake? And I know you had made a note about the right battlefield, and I kind of made that note too. And just the one quote that I want to kind of point myself back to is Francis de Sales says that the devil does his utmost to banish peace from one's heart because he knows that God abides in peace, and it is in the peace that he accomplishes great things. And I just think that's such a moving thought to me, because I think I fight the wrong fight sometimes. I think as he talks about, I think I'm worried about maybe a certain sin or a certain struggle that I have, and I just want the Lord to take it away. And I lose a lot of peace because I'm not just accepting that the Lord has his time and his ability to kind of fix me when he wants to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, that whole idea of just choosing the right battlefield. I like the way he pointed that out, that the real spiritual battle, rather than the pursuit of invincibility or some other absolute infallibility beyond our capacity. So I think sometimes, as we're fighting the struggle and we're lacking peace, or we're trying to overcome a particular sin, and I think we can get caught up in just like, I need to overcome this in order to get peace, or I need to overcome this particular situation in my life. And I think that's the question, is like, is the struggle that is it the right battlefield? There may be something else that the Lord is calling us to, in a sense, to maybe accept our weakness, to accept this struggle that we have. Not to say that it's this particular sin, or sin in general is okay, but I think sometimes, in spiritual direction, I've been told, that the Lord allows, lesser sin, so to speak, to help us to overcome greater sins. So, for example, to teach us humility, so that we don't fall into the trap of spiritual pride. That we might think that we're better than others. So, I think if we're looking, I think what Father Jacques Philippe is saying is, like, if we want peace, to help us to realize that to be in the right battlefield, and to realize where the Lord is causing us and inviting us to look at our spiritual lives.
Yeah, I agree, and I kind of underlined a similar part at the end where he said, rather it is to learn to maintain peace of heart under all circumstances, even in the case of defeat. Mm-hmm. And I know I've experienced that in my own life, like struggles with like anger or something, and I know that it would fix a lot of the things that I see that aren't great about my life or my family, but he doesn't fix it, and so it feels like I'm always confessing that or being defeated by that struggle. But God obviously wants me to maintain my peace in the midst of that struggle, and then return to the confessional, return to him in those ways. And I think that goes into the next chapter too, when it talks about the reasons why we lose our peace are all bad reasons. And I thought that was an interesting title. What stood out to you about that chapter, Father?
Well, I think in terms of the going along with that battlefield and the fight, that we have against, the forces of evil, against Satan, their temptations, and the thought came to me as, just David going into battle against Goliath, and he tried on all of the armor, and it didn't fit. It was weighing down on him, and basically, when we try to do all these other things to fix situations in our life that they're not what God wants us to do, we can become feeling encumbered and not free. But I think when David goes into battle, he takes those off and he goes in with just a sling and 5 stones. And I think that, and when he let go of that stone, it's just that he had that confidence and that peace that the Lord was with him in the battle. And I think for us too, it's when we're fighting the battle, the right battle on the right battlefield, we know that the Lord is with us because, as King David said, the battle is the Lord's, and He is the one that's working within us. He is the one who is trying to, it's for us to allow Him to do His battle within us, the right battle, and we just have to step into the breach, to face those Goliaths that are in our midst, and to not feel like we have to do it all ourselves with all the extra armor and and the weapons and things, but it's rather, the Lord gives us that peace to stand to face our enemies because He's with us. And I think that was a sense that I kind of got from that we lose our peace, but that was the yeah. Anyway.
I think too. The image I got was the Sacred Heart. I love the images of the Sacred Heart when Jesus is kind of offering it to us. I think that acceptance, right? That the battle belongs to the Lord. It's not us doing it. It's our accepting that God is going to work and fight through us. And that's that peace we get at Mass, right? Like, peace I leave with you, my own peace I give to you. Like, that's the peace we receive within the liturgy, which we talked about a lot last year. And really, we come for that peace. We give peace to each other. But really, we're asking the Lord to give us the peace so that we can be what we're called to be.
Yeah, I think that image of the Sacred Heart is beautiful, and I think, as a priest standing at the altar and being the ones after the consecration to say those words, the peace of the Lord be with you always, and just to rest with those words that the Lord is the one who gives us His peace, and He doesn't take it away. We give it away. Satan wants to steal it from us, and we freely can give it to him. But the Lord gives us His peace, doesn't take it away. And I sometimes think about that, when I'm saying those words, it just really extending that. But how much more, if I'm thinking consciously about it, how much more the Lord, that God who knows our hearts better than we know them ourselves, and He knows each person in the parish, who comes to Mass and throughout the world, where they're at, and He wants each and every one to have His peace. It's really kind of a profound reflection to think of, as the Lord gives us His heart, He's giving us His peace as well.
Yeah, it's just amazing how much He wants us for Himself, And the next two chapters talk about this idea of goodwill, and that it's necessary and that it's sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually, when I saw the word goodwill, I was thinking God's will, because you take an O out and it's God will, and God is the source of all goodness. He's the source of this peace. And so in so many ways, wanting what God wants in our life and accepting it is how we find peace and how we maintain it. And that's I think the whole point of this first part is that God's got to do the work. He's going to win the battle. Our biggest struggle is allowing Him to, is to just let Him kind of work within us, because we're so abrasive or we're so hard-hearted, like the Old Testament talks about.
But I think it is that goodwill as well. For us to have that intention. Like I've said, before we can become saints, we have to at least desire to become a saint. I want to be a saint. I want to be holy. I want this, and so it's the desire that can drive us, towards that. It's like we can't do it on our own. It's God's work in us, but our goodwill, our desire is in itself a cooperation with God. So I think in that sense of the goodwill that we have, in our spiritual lives helps us to if we want peace, if we desire that goodwill to achieve peace, we're already on the path to receiving it, because God wants to give it to us.
It's almost like peace brings action, right? Like we seek it, we desire it, God gives it, and then it kind of calls us on to something more. Like it's not a laziness. Like we don't just sit in the peace. We have to go do something with it. And I think that's where he's talking about this goodwill. Goodwill is the habitual determination to always say yes to God. Mm-hmm. And God doesn't just sit there and wait for us to do something. He's calling us to it. In the invitation of the Lord throughout the Gospels, right? He's always inviting someone, or inviting the disciples to do more, or inviting them to go here or there, or other places. And I think that's what I'm seeing too, even when we had the lecture on leisure. Leisure isn't just like vegging out. I think that's kind of what I think sometimes.
Like most people think.
I want rest. I'm going to sit down and just eat a bunch of Cheetos or something, But the whole idea of to be at peace and to be at rest with the Lord is doing His will, and He often calls us to action.
Mm-hmm. And I've oftentimes thought that, even in the midst of like, as much as, we've talked about like, just, about this idea of leisure and it's on Sunday and reclaiming Sunday. I think it's in that when we can put ourselves into positions, it might even be places we don't necessarily want to be, but in them, if we are, we can actually experience the peace of the Lord. Not that we are busying ourselves, but rather we're doing something, extending goodwill, towards someone, being around others who share our faith, and doing something, extending the grace of God, in terms of ministering to people who are homebound, or whatever the case may be. I've always experienced in those situations that I receive more. That if I'm, around people in the parish, go to their house for dinner, or do things that may extend or kind of draw energy from me, but I actually receive, more from that. And I think that kind of can be a sense, what I think Sunday is. It can be for us, that it's not to drain ourselves, but rather to fill ourselves with doing that goodwill.
So I think he's kind of ending this section of this book because he's getting us ready for how to react to those which causes us to lose the peace. And he kind of said that, where it's like the battle, the right battle. But I think too, we lose our peace because we don't remind ourselves of like whose peace it is. And the goodwill that we try to give, often maybe it becomes our own power, our own ability. And so that's why we have to go back to the well. We have to go back to the wellspring of the Lord and turn to Him. So last thoughts for this section of the book, or is that pretty much?
Yeah, I think it was a good section for us to reflect more upon as we move into the next kind of chapter of this. But to realize that there really is a battle out there. I mean, we know that we hear it all the time. There's a spiritual battle, but it's helpful for us to understand. One, there's the battle for our souls. Ultimately, that's the ultimate victory. But I think it's important for us to realize that we are in a spiritual battle, and that for the enemy, he wants to take away that peace, and he wants to steal that peace from us. And for us to realize that, and even God has ways of helping us to understand, like in the battle, to know that something's not right. If I've had to do that in my own life, and using these rules of discernment, and it's like something is not right in my soul. Maybe I'm going through a spiritual desolation. Maybe I'm going through spiritual trials, or the enemy is kind of lurking around. There's just this sense that something's not right, and I think the Lord puts that within us to recognize that. Whereas I think Satan wants to just tranquilize us. And that's what Father Jacques Philippe says in the book, is just to kind of numb us. But that's not the Lord. The Lord can agitate our souls and make us feel like we've lost our peace, but as St. Augustine says, our hearts are restless until they rest in thee. So the Lord kind of creates this restlessness for the purpose of drawing us back to Him. And I think that would be the last point that I'd like to make, is just that to realize that we're in a spiritual battle, but the Lord is fighting for us, that it's not all on us to figure it out. The Lord is constantly, these agitations, this restlessness is for the purpose of helping us to identify that, maybe we're away from Him, and to bring us back to Him. And I think that is for us to become more and more attuned. We are very attuned to our physical kind of well-being, but I think to become more attuned to our spiritual well-being. What is going on in my soul? What is going on? Where am I at in my spiritual life? And so that is to become more spiritually aware.
I think it draws us to that last point of just like heaven's our goal, like the eternal peace, like you spoke about. And I think that's what Jacques Philippe is trying to get to, is that if we can identify the things that are real, right? The battle's here. This peace is something that gets us, here, there, to the next step. And then the eternal peace is the goal. Heaven's the goal. And so now we're going to get into this idea of like, how do we react to the things that steal our peace? And so this is a good reflection maybe we can do tonight in small group, is what are some of the things that steal your peace before you even look ahead in the book? Because we all have our things, right? There's and then the things change throughout the years of following the Lord, where it's like maybe you've overcome something, but now the Lord is allowing you to see something else that maybe isn't quite right or quite fixed in us. And so I know that between Father and I, we hope what's best for you and for your small group. We want you guys to continue to grow and continue to call each other on and walk together in this pursuit of peace and this pursuit of holiness so that we can all spend time with the Lord in heaven for all eternity. So thank you guys so much for being in small group, and let us know what else you need from us and how we can help. Thank you.